Thank you. Well, it's great to see everybody today, and I'm very happy to introduce Dr. Bill Honigman. He's a retired physician, spent 35 years in the emergency department, and so he comes to us not only with professional experience, but also experience as a Democratic activist. He's been involved in all levels. He's been involved in Orange County Democratic politics at the state level, and he's been a DNC delegate twice. So he's with Progressive Democrats of America, and he's involved at all levels of that organization also, from the state to his local chapter and to the national chapter also. He does radio talks. You drop a dime and he'll be there to talk about Medicare for All. But as you can tell, he's concerned about other issues like climate change too. So, and when Dr. Bill retired, he said, oh, this will be great. I'll have more time to come and speak to clubs, you know. So he's extremely enthusiastic and optimistic, hardworking, and he's persistent.
And willing to drive from Orange.
And he drove all the way from Orange County, and he's done this for other clubs in LA County too. So welcome, Dr. Bill.
Thank you. When Carol told me she was a member, I thought, this is the right club to be at. So you guys are lucky to have Carol Federa. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Celine. Thank you so much for making this happen, inviting me to be your speaker. I always come with props. As Carol mentioned, I organize for the group Progressive Democrats America, PDA. If you haven't heard of us, by all means, please look up our information online, and you can contact me through our website, pdamerica.org. But if you just put in a web search, or better yet, if you'd like to be on our email list, because who doesn't need more emails, right? This is a sign-up list for our emails at PDA. And you might have heard of our motto is healthcare, not warfare, which I think it was Barbara Lee who suggested that particular moniker for us with an old friend and activist in the Democratic Party, both inside and outside the Democratic Party. His name was Tim Carpenter, who was a good friend of Tom Hayden's, who most of us know, of course. And that's pretty much the way we operate, both inside and outside the Democratic Party. But I'll float that clipboard. I have a couple of our signs here. Medicare For All, which is our topic for today, and healthcare is a human right. And I'm hoping that maybe we can do a group photo at the end, if folks will do that. I very much appreciate it. I'm going to limit my talk to some pretty basic things rather than give a long, kind of didactic talk on the subject. I think it was Celine. I think in your email you said, gee, you think an hour will be enough to cover such a complex topic? And I was like, boy, I'm lucky I get more than 5 minutes nowadays in most groups. But I'm happy to spend the bulk of that time just taking questions and comments that you all have, because I think we're all, you have to be living in a cave or have your head firmly stuck in the ground to not have an opinion on what's going on, especially with healthcare nowadays. I do recommend this excellent movie called Fix It Healthcare. Okay. Fix It. How many people here have seen it? Carol, Susan. Yeah. So Fix It Healthcare is a phenomenal film. It actually was made by a businessman. He owns a middle-sized business, kind of 150 employees back east, who figured out that if we had Medicare for All, his business would save a ton of money, as well as take care of all of his employees, So he decided to make a film about that. So really, actually, it speaks to the fiscal conservative side of, people are like, how are you going to pay for it, right? That's always their first question. How are you going to pay for that? So it speaks to that specifically, but it also covers the moral imperative. So, movies like Michael Moore's, which, Sicko, besides his kind of sarcastic humor, which I like, but some people don't. There was another excellent movie called the Healthcare Movie, which compares Canadian versus American healthcare. You can just do a Google search, healthcare and movie. But this one plays really universally to all audiences, and I would be happy to come back, because I have all this time in my retirement, happy to come back for a movie night or a Saturday matinee movie, to watch the movie and then have another discussion group on it. So by all means, that sounds like a good club activity, right?
Yeah,
Raise awareness, pull in people. I was a club president for 2 terms down in South Orange County, so I know about that. Planning events, getting people engaged, that's what it's really all about. I would just offer to you that I am a recently retired emergency room physician. But I've also been a political junkie kind of all my life. Grew up with the Vietnam War protests. I remember walking precincts for Eugene McCarthy in my neighborhood in Monterey Park, where I grew up. And my father was a family doctor in Boyle Heights, Ed, right, in your neighborhood where you practice. For many years. So I have felt politically engaged all of these years, and I always felt that that being involved as an activist, actually doing something, was so much better than sitting at home and complaining. Like you can only throw so many socks at your TV. So at that point you want to get off your butt and do something. And so that's why I'm involved and also organized for PDA, Progressive Democrats of America. And I really appreciate all of you for first being members of this club. I mean, job number 1 in politics is showing up. And you all showed up today, to cover this. Thank you. So, for yourselves, applaud yourselves. And thank you. And then also, those of you who do take the time to go to the county central committee meetings, or do, it's not easy to go to San Francisco and deal with metal detectors and, proxies and all those weird things at a convention. So thank you for doing that as well. Actually, anybody can go to our state Democratic conventions. You don't have to be a delegate or a proxy or some weird thing like that. You can go to the convention. There's lots to do there. There's caucus meetings, standing committee meetings, receptions, hospitality suites, rallies, all kinds of stuff to do there. So, say somebody in the Bay Area and you want to go on up there for the weekend, come on up. Maybe you can get a place to stay. Don't stay at the convention hotel. It's outrageously expensive. So anyhow, back to healthcare. I was, as a practicing emergency room doctor here in Southern California, I would on a routine basis see people who fell through the cracks in healthcare. And I just thought, wow, I'm politically involved and I'm seeing this crisis, that's getting worse and worse over time in American healthcare. It's certainly not the healthcare that we had when my father was a family doctor and would admit patients at White Memorial Beverly Hospital. He did his training at LA County, by the way. So I went into emergency because I'm kind of a fix-it type of guy. That I wanted to fix people's problems when they came in, and I realized that so many of the problems that they had were institutional, really. It was because they couldn't see a doctor when they needed to, and would end up with complications, like say, if you have a heart attack or stroke, have you been taking your medication? We all know about people cutting their pills in half or shorting themselves on their insulin now. I mean, it's terrible, and we don't do well compared to other countries, in terms of outcomes that way. But we'll go over that in a minute. But it could be something as simple as a dental infection. I mean, how many people here are putting off dental work because of what it costs? And a lot of us are afraid of the pain and everything. But I'm raising my hand because I am. I'm putting off an implant or whatever else I need, because most insurances don't cover all that by any means. It's a chunk of change just to get your teeth taken care of. And your teeth are as important as the rest of your body, right? Like Alan Grayson said, he carried a bill in Congress called "Seniors Have Eyes, Ears, and Teeth," because Medicare doesn't cover eyes, ears, and teeth. So we need to expand services so it includes the rest of the human body. For gosh sake, mental health care treatment has to be adequate. And that is a huge part of our homeless problem, right? I've heard statistics, up to 50% of our homeless have untreated mental health and or chemical addiction problems. So what happens to those people living on the streets right now who get treated for those medical problems? Are they more likely to re-enter society and be productive members once again? Absolutely. So if we were really taking care of our people, everybody in America, like they do in the other advanced countries around the world, we wouldn't have these other crises really. And so healthcare is a crisis. Every bit as much as the environmental crisis, climate crisis, climate emergency, and so we need to go the next step. The Affordable Care Act was progress, but we need to go the next step. And of course, here in California, we've been thinking about that for some time. Most people here are familiar with Sheila Kuehl's effort to get universal health care in California. It was a very purely designed single-payer system. And it was financed with a payroll tax, just like we all pay for Medicare and Medicaid, which of course is Medi-Cal in California. It was a simple payroll tax, and it would have done that. Before her, I researched this for a talk once. I could find, going back to 1971, Speaker Willie Brown and Senate Pro Tem leader John Burton put forward a single-payer universal health care plan in 1971. I didn't even know that. So this goes back a long time. And every time that it's proposed, a fiscal study is done to make sure that it's feasible, a feasibility study. So every time that's happened, we've come to the same scientific conclusion, that a single-payer system saves money. Doesn't cost more, it saves money and will save lives, because with those savings, you can provide more care. But actually, it's savings above and beyond making our benefits more comprehensive to include mental health, dental, vision, long-term care. All of that can be had, and then there's savings on top of that. And that's science. How many people here believe in science? It's all of us, right? Or you shouldn't be at a Democratic club meeting. So Republicans don't, not so much. But we all believe in science. That's good economic science. And those things have been shown time and time again. The most recent study done by a conservative think tank, some of you may have heard of this group called the Mercatus Group out of George Mason University. It was a very, very conservative economic group, that it is really sided with, way beyond University of Chicago conservative economics even. But they admitted it would save like $2 trillion over 10 years, which is about $200 billion per year going to a single payer system. They couldn't deny that it would save that, even by adding all those other services that we're talking about. So what is the resistance? Well, to me, it's frankly just political. If we're going to save money and save lives, then it's only politics. And there are two drivers in politics at this point, which are money and
power.
People.
What kind of people? Votes, right? So that's the money versus the people, or money versus votes. So how do we shift that? Because in that last 30 years that I've been talking about, that more and more people are falling through the cracks, the way to reverse that is to get to the people side, to get the balance of power away from the money and to the people. I mean, look at that prescription drug bill we tried to pass a couple years ago, Prop 61. We were blown out of the water because pharmaceutical companies put lies on the airwaves. And they always do that. In these ballot measures, you know, they put lies on the airwaves. People don't know what to believe. They're more likely to go vote no whenever they don't know what to believe, right? So they voted it down. So we need, like the kids at Parkland, you know, the gun safety issue, never again. We need to be able to, for the people on healthcare to be able to say, we call BS. When they put up something on the airwaves, the people need to say, we call BS. So we can recognize the BS from what's true, from the science. So that's why I think it's really important that we're talking about it now, that we do a movie showing, we pull in some people, you know, we build our base on the issue, and we engage voters. I've been saying that I don't think it was Donald Trump that turned out for the big blue wave that happened in 2018. I mean, the Democrats don't vote. They did this time. But, you know, I think it was the town halls that we had, where they were talking about the issues. Gun safety, healthcare, the environment, all those things were talked about in town halls all across the country. And that's why we won so many seats in the House of Representatives, in my opinion. And that's what we have to do in 2020. Once again, we need to talk about the issues. I don't want to talk about, you know, process, and I really don't want to talk about personality. It's really policy is what does, is really drives people and engage the electorate. That's how we get voter turnout, is by engaging people on the issue. So I'm going to present to you just a few things on this handout very quickly, what I wrote, the basics of Medicare for All. Because there's a lot of confusion, even amongst ourselves, you know, even amongst advocates. We all want universal health care. And I define that as being where all the people get all the care. We all want that. Who wouldn't? I mean, you know, I say this is not right versus left, it's right versus wrong. I mean, you know, we might agree with Trump voters on things like having clean air and clean water. Or that all of our, you know, family, friends, co-workers ought to have health care. So, you know, that's something I think where right and left kind of meet around back, you know, and really make a big tent, okay? So this is big tent politics, and it's just the right thing to do. We already said it's morally the right thing and economically the right thing. We need to do this by eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. And I'm going to go over, you know, what are the obvious offenders causing the waste, fraud, and abuse. We need to make healthcare affordable, but also accountable to we the people. It's affordable to we the people, not any one individual. Because now that brings up the concept of Medicare for all. Don't forget the for all part, okay? Because we all know and like Medicare, although it needs to be expanded and improved, no doubt about it. But it also needs to be for all. So let's go over that in a little bit of detail. First, a few healthcare facts as regards the crisis that we have, and most people know this already. We aren't the best healthcare in the world, right? 37th. We rank 37th. We're tied with Slovenia. So if you go to Slovenia, you know, a very nice place, I'm sure, in Eastern Europe, you have a healthcare need, you'll get about the same healthcare as you get in the United States. Not my idea of, you know, excelling by any means. What does that mean? That means that we don't live as long, right? Longevity, right? How long do we get to live? All of the other advanced countries in the world outperform us in longevity. We are not living as long as they are. So what's an advantage? I know Bernie Sanders calls them major countries. I don't know what that word means, but you'll hear Bernie say that over and over again. But they're advanced countries, and I would venture to you that you could call us all the civilized countries in the world, but we're not civilized because we don't provide health care for our people and education and other things. But in all those advanced countries, they live longer than we do. They have lower infant and maternal mortality rates. That means how many of our babies die in their first year of life? Ours is lower. How many of our moms die related to childbirth? prenatal, postnatal delivery care. Those numbers are getting worse. We have double the maternal mortality of all those other countries. Not something to be proud of. Our moms are dying related to childbirth more often. This is unacceptable. It should be considered, this should be outrage. I mean, if we started a third party, I would call it the burn it down party, because we need to burn stuff down over numbers like this. Okay? So that's, instead of burning it down, right? It's like the rent is too damn high. Burn it down. So instead of burning it down, we need to burn, our energy on this subject, on the outrageousness of this subject. The U.S. spends twice as much as all of these other major countries, as in, we're spending twice as much. And for that, we're getting worse outcomes. Where's the money going? Well, you look further down the page, it's a third of every healthcare dollar in the U.S. is lost to administrative waste and predatory profiteering. Okay, so we're not talking pie in the sky. I call this Marie Callender's pie. If you went to Marie Callender's, you bought a pie, you took it home and you opened up the box, and a third of your pie was gone, would you be pissed? Yeah. Well, a third of our healthcare pie is gone when we get home. You're not getting the care that you're paying for. When people say, how are you going to pay for that? The answer? We're already paying for it. We're just not getting what we're paying for. So that's where a third of every healthcare dollar is wasted. 1 million, for every 1 million people who don't have insurance, 1,000 people die preventable deaths. Just because they can't afford to see a doctor. So, nationwide, that it's about 10% still, even after the Affordable Care Act. I think that's actually a conservative figure. It's probably closer to 15%. It was close to a third of the entire, before the ACA, it was close to a third of the entire population did not have insurance. Now it's at about 15%, I think, nationwide. But let's just say 10%. So what's the US population? About 300 million. So that would be, 10% of that would be 30 million. So that would be 30,000 people die in America every year because they can't afford to see a doctor. How many people die in Canada because they can't afford to see a doctor? 0.
Yeah.
None. In California, what's our population? Close to 40? 40 million? Let's call it 30 to round off the numbers. Let's say 3,000 people are dying in California every year because they can't afford to see a doctor. Unacceptable. That's between 5 and 10 people every day are dying in California because they can't afford to see a doctor. That's the moral imperative, that preventable death rate. The most common cause of personal bankruptcy in America is medical costs. And if that's not outrageous enough, and how many people living on the streets are there because of medical costs and debt? If that's not bad enough, though, that it's the highest cause of personal bankruptcy, 75% of those people declaring bankruptcy for medical reasons had insurance. So that brings up the concept of being underinsured. It's not just being uninsured, it's underinsured because you didn't have enough insurance to pay for your bills. And Barack Obama, I love the guy, a great orator. He said something like 75% of people like the insurance they have. So why should we get rid of that? Well, that's because only 25% of people actually need their insurance at any particular time. Once you go to use your insurance, you don't like it so much. There's all the fine print, there's surprise bills that you get from the hospital, all of that. And I can tell you, as an emergency room doctor, I was faced all the time with people who left against medical advice. The medical people know what that term is, AMA it's called. There was a great article I posted on my Facebook page recently about people leaving AMA in California. That number's on the rise. That means people go to see a doctor and they find out it costs too much and they leave. And you might propose a CAT scan for appendicitis or an ultrasound for a possible blood clot, and they'll ask you what it costs. And, you know, you sit in a financial counselor, and next thing you know, they're gone. So that's where we get preventable deaths. People are walking out of the emergency room, or they're just not getting care because of that personal financial cost. You know, people say, well, you got to have some skin in the game. I'm like, oh, that's such a great phrase. I think every person has skin, so we all have skin in the game. Okay? So, you know, you wouldn't go to emergency unless you felt you needed to. An emergency room's not a fun place like, it's not like Starbucks. You don't just hang out there, you know, do your email, right? No, in fact, it's kind of creepy and scary even, you know, because there's creepy and scary people in the ER and stuff. And diseases. Who wants to be around people with disease? So, you know, so everybody has skin in the game. And that's what Canadians do. They say, oh yeah, you know, you cut your toe, you know, you see if you can wait to see your own doctor, or you go and you expect to wait. You know, while they're bringing in ambulances from the back, you expect to wait for your cut toe. You know, that's what Canadians do. And it works out just fine. The concept of Medicare for All now is incredibly popular. When you poll nationwide, it's 70%. The general population like the idea of everybody having Medicare in this country. Why not? Every other advanced country in the world does that already. Okay? You poll Democrats, it's 85% nationwide. Now, you think California has better than that? Of course. We're progressive central. We're the starting point of the big blue wave, right? So, of course, California Democrats are even ahead of that. I would guess it's like 90 or 95%. If you know, especially if you polled everybody at that convention. We've had on the platform of the California Democratic Party, we've had positive advocacy for a single-payer system for a decade.